The world gets weird after midnight. I know that's probably a cliche at this point, but after working night shift for a few years, I've learned it's true. Things just feel different. Buildings sound different. People act different. Even places you've seen 1,000 times during the day suddenly feel unfamiliar. Back in 2019, I worked overnight stocking shelves at a grocery store. Nothing glamorous. I wasn't solving crimes or fighting off robbers. Most nights involved moving boxes, stocking products, and trying not to fall asleep around 4 in the morning. The store closed at midnight. After that, customers were gone, and it was just employees. Usually 4 or 5 of us total. A manager, a couple stockers, sometimes a maintenance guy. That was it. Honestly, I liked it. The work was simple. The pay wasn't terrible. And for the most part, the nights were predictable. At least they were until the footsteps started. The first time I heard them, I didn't think anything of it. I was stocking the pet food aisle around 2 a.m. One earbud in, a pallet of dog food sitting beside me. Pretty normal night. Then I heard footsteps somewhere nearby. Not loud, just somebody walking. I assumed it was Eric. Eric was another stocker who worked most nights. The guy never stopped moving, so I ignored it. A few seconds later, I looked up. Nobody there. That was a little strange, but not strange enough to worry about. The store was big. Maybe he had turned a corner. Maybe I heard someone farther away. No big deal. A couple minutes passed. Then I heard them again. Slow, steady, almost casual, like someone browsing. The kind of pace customers use when they're shopping. I remember pulling my earbud out, listening. The footsteps stopped, just completely stopped. No turning corner, no cut, no voice, nothing. The silence felt weird, really weird. Eventually, I shrugged it off and went back to work. A few nights later, it happened again. This time it wasn't me. It was Eric. He came into receiving looking confused. Not scared, just confused. He asked if anyone else was still in the building. The manager laughed, said no. Why? Eric explained he'd heard someone walking around near frozen foods. The manager figured it was one of us. Problem was, we were all standing there. Every employee in the store. Nobody had been near frozen foods. For a second, nobody said anything. Then somebody joked that the building was haunted. Everyone laughed, including me. At the time, it genuinely seemed like nothing. But looking back, that was probably the first sign something wasn't right. Over the next couple weeks, weird little things kept happening. Nothing major, nothing dramatic, just small stuff. The kind of things you convince yourself aren't important. A shopping cart left in an aisle after closing. A package of cookies sitting in a random location. Products moved from one department to another. Things like that. Retail workers see weird stuff all the time. Customers do strange things. Employees forget things. It's easy to explain away. The problem was that these things only happened at night, and they kept happening. One morning, I found a half-empty bottle of water sitting on a shelf in the back storage area. Nobody claimed it. Nobody knew where it came from. The next week, Eric found a jacket hanging in an employee-only hallway. Again, nobody claimed it. The manager assumed somebody accidentally left it behind. But weeks passed. The jacket stayed there. Nobody ever asked for it. I remember joking that we had an invisible employee. A lot of us started making jokes like that because the alternative felt ridiculous. The idea that someone might actually be inside the building after closing didn't seem possible. The doors were locked. The alarm system worked. There was security footage. How would someone even stay inside? Then one night, around 3 a.m., I heard a cough. A man's cough. Not close. Maybe 2 miles away. Immediately, I assumed it was another employee. Then I realized something. The cough had come from the customer side of the store. Not from receiving. Not from stock rooms. The sales floor. I walked to the end of the aisle. Looked around. Nothing. Every aisle was empty. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The entire place felt strangely still. I stood there for a few seconds. Then I heard it again. The same cough. This time farther away. almost like whoever made it had moved. That's when I got uncomfortable. Not terrified, just uneasy. I found Eric and asked if he'd been near grocery. He hadn't. The manager hadn't either. Nobody had. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't, because now I knew I wasn't imagining it. A few nights later, things escalated. Around 4 a.m., I had to grab inventory sheets from a storage room in the back of the building. It was an area customers never saw. Most employees rarely went there. The hallway leading to it was narrow and poorly lit. Half the lights flickered constantly. I remember walking down that hallway, feeling annoyed more than anything. I just wanted my paperwork and wanted to get out. I opened the storage room door, then stopped. A shopping cart sat in the middle of the room. Not outside, not near the sales floor. Inside the storage room, the cart contained random groceries. Bread, canned soup, batteries, crackers, bottled water. The items looked like somebody had gone shopping. I just stood there staring at it, trying to understand how it got there. Customers couldn't access that area. Employees never used shopping carts. The entire thing made no sense. I immediately found the manager. This time he didn't laugh. Not even a little. We checked with everyone working. Nobody knew anything about it. Nobody had moved it. Nobody had seen it. The manager eventually rolled the cart back out front, then told us all to get back to work. But I could tell he was bothered. We all were. Something felt off. Deep down, I think everybody knew it. Nobody wanted to say it out loud. Around 5 a.m., Eric came running into receiving. Actually running. I used to work for a janitorial company that cleaned office buildings at night. Nothing exciting. Most of the job was vacuuming carpets, emptying garbage cans, cleaning bathrooms, and listening to podcasts to make the hours go by faster. The company had contracts with a bunch of different buildings around the city. Some were small, some were huge. Most of them were completely empty by the time we arrived. Honestly, that was part of the appeal. No customers. No managers looking over your shoulder. No interruptions. Just you in a nearly empty building. This happened about 4 years ago. At the time, I was assigned to a 12-story office building downtown. It wasn't the biggest building we cleaned, but it was definitely one of the oldest. The place had been around since the late 1970s. You could tell, too. The carpets were old. The elevators made weird noises. And there always seemed to be some part of the building under renovation. Most nights I worked alone. I'd start around 7 p.m. and finish sometime after midnight. The routine was always the same. Vacuum, bathrooms, garbage, move to the next floor. Nothing ever changed. At least not at first. The first strange thing happened on a Thursday. I was cleaning the 8th floor when I noticed a coffee mug sitting on one of the desks. That wasn't unusual by itself. People leave stuff behind all the time. The strange part was that the mug was warm. Not hot. Not fresh. Just warm. Like somebody had been drinking from it recently. I remember picking it up and immediately checking the office. Nobody. The lights were off. The entire floor was empty. I shrugged it off. Maybe someone had stayed late. Maybe I just missed them leaving. Not a huge deal. A few days later, it happened again. Different floor, different office. This time it was a half-eaten sandwich. I found it sitting on a desk around 10 p.m. The bread wasn't stale. The sandwich hadn't been sitting there all day. It looked fresh, really fresh. I remember staring at it for a second, then looking around the office. Nothing. No people. No sounds. Just rows of empty cubicles. I tossed in the garbage and moved on. But now I was paying attention. Over the next couple weeks, I started noticing things. Little things. The kind of things that don't seem important until they start adding up. Coffee cups, food wrappers, water bottles. A chair moved from where it had been the night before. An office door left open. A light turned on. Stuff that shouldn't have been happening in a building that was supposed to be empty. One night, I mentioned it to another janitor, an older guy named Frank. Frank had worked there for years. The guy seemed completely unbothered. He just laughed, then said, "You're noticing it too, huh?" I remember looking at him. What do you mean? Frank shrugged. Stuff moves around. That wasn't the answer I was expecting. I asked him if there were employees staying late. He shook his head. No idea. Then he went back to cleaning. At the time, I thought he was messing with me. Looking back, I don't think he was. A few nights later, I was vacuuming the 6th floor when I heard a door close somewhere nearby. Not slam, just close. A normal office door. I immediately stopped the vacuum. The floor was supposed to be empty. I listened. Nothing. Then, footsteps. Break time equals 0. 5s/. Somebody walking. Slowly. Not running. Not sneaking. Just walking. I followed the sound around a corner. Nobody there. The hallway was empty. I checked the offices. Nothing. The footsteps had simply stopped. I remember standing there feeling ridiculous. Like I was chasing ghosts. Eventually, I went back to work. But deep down, something felt wrong. The next week, things got weirder. Around 11 p.m., I was cleaning a conference room on the 10th floor. The room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I remember looking out at the lights while wiping down a table. Then I noticed a reflection behind me. Someone standing in the hallway. I spun around immediately. Nobody. The hallway was empty. I stepped outside. Still nobody. For a second, I genuinely thought I was losing it. But then I noticed something. One of the office doors farther down the hall was slowly closing. I just stood there watching it. The building's air conditioning sometimes moved doors. That's what I told myself. Still, I didn't like it. Not one bit. The following Tuesday, I arrived for work and found security waiting in the lobby. Apparently, someone had been accessing restricted areas of the building. Storage rooms, maintenance corridors, places employees weren't supposed to be. The security guard asked if I'd seen anything unusual. I almost laughed. I didn't even know where to begin. I told him about the footsteps, the food, the weird office activity. His expression changed immediately. Then he asked me something strange. Have you ever been to the old records floor? I told him no. I didn't even know there was one. Apparently, there was a partially abandoned floor between levels 4 and 5. Years earlier, the building had been renovated. Part of the structure had essentially been sealed off. Old offices, storage areas, and used rooms. Most people didn't even know it existed anymore. The security guard mentioned that motion sensors had been triggering there at night. Repeatedly. But whenever guards checked, nobody was found. That should have been reassuring. It wasn't, because suddenly all those little incidents felt connected. The warm coffee, the fresh food, the footsteps, the doors, the feeling of being watched. A few nights later, I got my answer. And I wish I hadn't. It was around midnight. I was finishing up on the 7th floor. Most of the building was dark. The only sounds were the hum of ventilation and my vacuum. Pretty normal. Then I heard something. A cough. A man's cough. Not far away. Maybe 20 feet. I shut the vacuum off immediately. Silence. A few seconds passed. Then I heard it again. The exact same cough. Coming from the stairwell. I don't know why, but every hair on my arm stood up. I walked toward the stairwell door. Slowly. The closer I got, the more nervous I became. The building suddenly felt enormous. Way too big. Way too empty. I opened the stairwell door. The sound echoed instantly. Nobody there. Just concrete stairs, metal railings, and darkness below. I was about to close the door when I noticed something. A flashlight. Not turned on. Just sitting on one of the lower steps. I knew it wasn't supposed to be there, because I had walked through that stairwell earlier. It hadn't been there then. I picked it up. It was warm. Very warm. Like someone had been holding it moments earlier. That's when I heard movement below me. A footstep. Then another. Somewhere deeper in the stairwell. I froze. The footsteps stopped. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Because I knew someone was down there. And whoever was down there knew I was standing above them. Then I heard a voice. Quiet. Almost too quiet to hear. Hello. The word echoed upward through the stairwell. I didn't answer. Something about the voice felt wrong. Not threatening, not angry, just wrong, like somebody who wasn't expecting to be discovered. Then came another footstep. Closer. I went straight to security. I wasn't about to go chasing somebody through a dark stairwell by myself, especially not after finding that flashlight. The second I got downstairs, I told the guard what happened. To his credit, he took it seriously right away. No jokes. No, it's probably nothing. Just grabbed his radio and called another guard over. A few minutes later, the three of us were heading back toward the stairwell. I remember feeling stupid and nervous at the same time. Part of me expected nothing to be there. Part of me really hoped nothing was there. We opened the stairwell door. The flashlight was still sitting on the step. The guard picked it up, still warm. He looked at me. Then we started heading down. The lower we went, the more uncomfortable I got. The building was old, really old, and the stairwell seemed to go on forever. A few floors down, one of the guards stopped. He pointed at the wall. There was a door I'd never noticed before. It was painted the same color as the concrete. No sign, no label, nothing. Apparently, it led into part of the old records floor. The abandoned section security had mentioned. The guard tried the handle. Locked. Then he noticed something. The lock had fresh scratches around it. Recent scratches, like somebody had been opening it regularly. A maintenance key eventually got the door open. The second we stepped inside, I realized why motion sensors kept getting triggered. Someone had been living there. Not just sleeping there occasionally. Living there. There was a mattress, food, water, batteries, clothes, even a small camping stove. The room looked surprisingly organized, like somebody had settled in. One of the guards slowly walked farther inside, then stopped. Guys! I remember the tone of his voice. Not scared, just confused. We walked over. There was a notebook sitting on a desk. The pages were filled with observations about the building. Employee schedules, cleaning schedules, security patrol routes. Notes about which doors were checked, which floors were visited, which cameras worked, which cameras didn't. Whoever had written it had spent a lot of time watching people. A lot. Then we found something else. A map. A hand-drawn map of the building, with certain offices circled. Certain routes highlighted. The guards immediately called police. This was way beyond a trespassing situation now. While we waited, nobody touched anything. We just stood there looking around, trying to understand how somebody had managed to stay hidden for so long. Then one of the guards noticed something. The food wasn't old. Some of it had expiration dates only a few days away. There was even a half-finished bottle of water on the desk, meaning whoever was staying there hadn't been gone long. Maybe not long at all. That realization made the room feel a whole lot smaller, because suddenly it wasn't a question of who had been living there. It was a question of whether they were still somewhere in the building. Police arrived about 20 minutes later. The search lasted nearly 2 hours. Eventually, they found the guy. He was hiding inside a maintenance closet on another floor. According to police, he'd been secretly occupying the abandoned section of the building for several months. Nobody knew exactly how long. Long enough to learn the security routines. Long enough to learn employee schedules. Long enough to stay completely invisible. The weirdest part? He wasn't stealing. He wasn't vandalizing anything. As far as anyone could tell, he was just living there, using the building as a place to stay. The company eventually sealed off the abandoned floor. New locks, new cameras, new patrol routes. And after that, the strange activity stopped completely. No more warm coffee cups. No more fresh food appearing overnight. No more footsteps. No more doors opening and closing by themselves. Everything went back to normal, at least for everyone else. For me, the thing I still think about is that flashlight. Because if I hadn't heard that cough, if I hadn't opened that stairwell door, I probably would have walked right past that guy for months without ever knowing he was there. And judging by those notes he kept, he definitely knew I was there. A few years ago, I worked late shifts for a small accounting firm. Nothing exciting. Most of my job involved spreadsheets, emails, and trying to stay awake during meetings that probably could have been emails. The office was located downtown in a fairly large building, the kind with multiple businesses, a shared lobby, and a parking garage underneath. Most employees left around 5 p.m. I usually stayed until 9 or 10, sometimes later during tax season. Because of that, I got used to being one of the last people in the building. It never really bothered me. The garage was well lit. There were security cameras everywhere. I never had a reason to feel unsafe. Then one night, I noticed a man standing near the elevators. At first, nothing about him stood out. He looked normal, maybe mid-50s, dark jacket, baseball cap, just standing there. I remember thinking he was probably waiting for someone. I got into my car and left. No big deal. The next night, he was there again. Same spot, same clothes, same posture, just standing near the elevators. This time I paid a little more attention. Not because he was doing anything wrong. It was just odd. The garage was mostly empty by that hour. There wasn't much reason to stand there. Still, I ignored it. A week passed. Then I saw him again, and again, and again. It got to the point where I'd almost expect him to be there. Always near the elevators. Always alone. Always standing completely still. The thing that finally started bothering me was the timing. No matter when I left, he seemed to be there. 9 p.m., 9:30, 10 p.m. One night, I worked until almost midnight. He was still there. Same location, same posture, same expression. It sounds stupid now, but I started changing little things to test it. I'd leave through a different exit, stay later, leave earlier, take longer breaks before heading down. Didn't matter. Somehow, he always seemed to be there when I arrived at the garage. One Thursday night, curiosity finally got the better of me. I decided to walk past him instead of heading straight to my car. As I got closer, I noticed something strange. He wasn't looking at the elevators. He wasn't looking around. He was looking directly at my parking spot. Not my car. My parking spot. The exact space I parked in every day. A weird feeling settled into my stomach. I kept walking. Pretended not to notice. When I got into my car, I looked over. He was still staring at the spot. Not moving. Not blinking. Just staring. I left immediately. The next morning, I mentioned it to a coworker. I expected them to laugh. Instead, they asked, "The guy in the garage?" That caught me off guard. Apparently, I wasn't the only one who had noticed him. A few other employees had seen him too. Always at night. Always near the elevators. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew why he was there. The building manager eventually got involved. Security reviewed footage. At first, they assumed he was another tenant. Maybe somebody waiting for rides. Maybe somebody dealing with personal issues. Then they checked how long he was actually staying. That's when things got weird. The footage showed him arriving around 6 p.m. most nights, then standing in roughly the same location until after midnight. Sometimes longer. He wasn't meeting anyone. Wasn't getting into a vehicle. Wasn't entering the building. Just standing there. Watching. Security eventually approached him. According to the guard, the conversation was strange. The man claimed he was waiting for somebody. When asked who, he wouldn't answer. When asked which business they worked for, he wouldn't answer that either. Then he simply left. The next night, he was back. Same place. Same routine. At that point, management contacted police. The man wasn't breaking any laws. The garage was technically accessible to the public, but his behavior was making people uncomfortable. Officers spoke with him several times over the following weeks. Every interaction was apparently similar. Vague answers. No explanation. No real reason for being there. Then one night, everything finally made sense. A woman from another company in the building reported finding something tucked under her windshield wiper. A photograph. Just a normal printed photograph. The picture showed her walking from the elevator to her car, taken inside the parking garage, at night. A second employee found one the following week. Then another. Then another. Every photo showed somebody walking alone through the garage. Nobody smiling. Nobody posing. Just candid photos taken from a distance. The police took things much more seriously after that. An investigation eventually linked the photographs to the same man. According to reports, he'd been spending months documenting people who regularly worked late in the building, following routines, learning schedules, taking photographs. Nobody ever got a clear answer why. The police found hundreds of photos when they searched his vehicle. Employees, cars, parking spaces, arrival times, departure times, pages of notes. The man was arrested shortly afterward. I don't know what ultimately happened to him. I transferred jobs not long after. But every once in a while, I still think about those nights. Because for months, I'd walk through that garage completely unaware that somebody had been watching, studying, taking notes, learning my routine. And what really gets me is this. The photograph police showed me wasn't taken near my car. It wasn't taken near the elevators. It was taken from behind a concrete support column less than 20 feet away from where I parked every night. Meaning while I was unlocking my car, he was already there, watching. Back in 2020, I worked at a small distribution warehouse outside the city. It wasn't a huge operation, maybe 30 employees total. Most of us worked daytime shifts, but every now and then I'd get stuck staying late to finish inventory counts or handle incoming shipments. The warehouse itself wasn't creepy, at least not during the day. At night was a different story. The place felt enormous once everybody went home. Thousands of square feet, long rows of shelves, huge dark loading bays. The kind of building where every little sound echoes. Most nights, I'd be one of the last people there. Lock up, set the alarm, go home. Simple. Then one morning my manager pulled me into his office. He looked confused, not angry, just confused. He asked me where I'd been around 2 a.m. I laughed. At home, sleeping. Why? He turned his monitor toward me. The building's access system showed my employee key card had been used at 2:07 a.m. Then again at 2:19. Then again at 2:43. I immediately told him there had to be a mistake. My key card was sitting in my wallet. I even pulled it out and showed him. The manager frowned. The system logs were usually accurate. Very accurate. Still, weird things happen. Computers mess up. Maybe it was a glitch. That's what we assumed. A few days later, it happened again. This time at 3 a.m. According to the logs, my key card entered through a side employee entrance, then accessed a storage area, then exited the building. I was asleep the entire time. Now management was concerned. They reset my credentials, issued a new card, changed access permissions. Problem solved. Or so we thought. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Only this time it wasn't my card. It was another employee's. Then another. Then another. The access log showed random employees entering the warehouse overnight. People who were nowhere near the building. At first, management thought someone had cloned the cards. That would have been bad enough. But when security reviewed camera footage, things got stranger. The doors were opening. The logs were recording access. Yet nobody appeared on camera. No person. No vehicle. Nothing. The footage would show an empty hallway. Then the door would unlock. Open. Stay open for a few seconds. Then close again. No one entered. No one exited. Just an empty doorway. I'll admit it. At that point, everyone was freaked out. Not because we thought it was paranormal. Because we couldn't figure out. Every explanation seemed to create more questions. The company hired a security consultant. The guy spent several days reviewing footage and access logs. Eventually, he found something. The access system wasn't malfunctioning. The doors genuinely were being opened, just not by employees. Apparently, years earlier, before the current ownership took over, a maintenance contractor had been issued a master access card. a card with permissions for nearly every door in the building. According to company records, that card had supposedly been returned. It hadn't. Someone still had it. The consultant dug deeper, and what he discovered made everybody uncomfortable. Whoever had the card had been accessing the warehouse for months, maybe longer. Not every night, just often enough to avoid suspicion. Mostly between 1 and 4 a.m. Always when the building was empty. Always moving through the same sections. Storage rooms, break rooms, office areas, places with cameras, places without cameras. The next few weeks turned into a waiting game. Security increased patrols. Extra cameras were installed. Management wanted to catch whoever was doing it. Then one night, they finally did. A security guard responding to a door alert found a man inside the building. He wasn't stealing anything, wasn't vandalizing anything. He was sitting alone in the employee break room. Just sitting there, like he belonged. According to the police report, the man had previously worked for the contractor responsible for installing parts of the warehouse's security system years earlier. He knew the layout, knew the access points, knew which cameras had blind spots. Most disturbing of all, he apparently enjoyed entering buildings after hours without being detected. Not to steal, not to damage anything, just because he could. Police later connected him to several similar incidents at other businesses. The company changed every lock and access credential after that. The incidents stopped immediately. No more mysterious entries. No more late-night alerts. No more unexplained access logs. I stayed there another year. Never saw anything strange again. But every now and then I'd think about those nights. Because while everyone assumed the warehouse was empty, some random guy was walking around inside, making coffee, using the break room, sitting in employee areas, watching security patrols. And nobody had any idea he was there. The thing that still bothers me most came from the police report. One line, just one. Apparently when officers asked him why he kept coming back, he smiled and said, "I like seeing how long it would take someone to notice."